Howdy, y'all. Swan Marion, the bookworm cowboy, here at the Market Street Pizza. And I'm going to read some more of the Kane Chronicles, The Serpent's Shadow, by Rick Riordan. Chapter 13. A friendly game of hide and seek with bonus points for painful death. Oh, I see. You've off with the axe-murdering demon. Trying to make my part of the story seem boring, eh? Carver, you are such an attention hog. Well, as you were cruising down the Nile in a lavishly appointed riverboat, Walt and I were traveling in a bit less style. From the realm of the dead, I ventured another conversation with Isis to negotiate a doorway into the Nile Delta. Isis must have been cross with me. I can't imagine why. Because she deposited Walt and me waist deep in a swamp, our feet completely stuck in the mud. Thanks! I yelled at the sky. Tried to move but couldn't. Clouds of mosquitoes gathered around us. The river was alive with bubbling and splashing noises. It made me think of pointy-toothed tigerfish and water elementals Carter had once described to me. Any ideas? I asked Walt. Now that he was back in the mortal world, he seemed to have lost his vitality. He looked, I suppose the phrase would be, hollowed out. His clothes fit more loosely. The whites of his eyes were tinted with an unhealthy yellow. His shoulders hunched as if the amulets around his neck weighed him down. Seeing him like this made me want to cry. Just not something I do easily. Yeah, he said, digging through his bag. I have just the thing. He brought out a sharpie, a white wax figurine of a crocodile. Oh, you didn't, I said. You wonderfully naughty boy. Walt smiled. For a moment he almost looked like his old self. Everyone was abandoning Brooklyn House. I figured it wasn't right to leave him behind. He tossed the figurine in the river and spoke a command word. Philip of Macedonia erupted from the water. Being surprised by a giant crocodile in the Nile is something you usually want to avoid. Philip was a welcome sight. He smiled at me with his massive croc teeth, his pink eyes gleaming in his white scaly back floating just above the surface. Walt and I grabbed hold. In no time, Philip had pulled us free of the muck. Soon we were perched on his back, making our way upriver. I rode in front, straddling Philip's shoulders. Walt sat at Philip's midsection. Philip was such a roomy crocodile, and this has considerable space between Walt and me. Possibly more than I would have preferred. Nevertheless, we had a lovely ride, except for being drenched, caked in mud, and swarmed by mosquitoes. The landscape was a maze of waterways, grassy islands, reed beds, and muddy shoals. It was impossible to tell where the river ended and the land began. Occasionally in the distance, we saw plowed fields or the rooftops of small villages, but mostly we had the river to ourselves. We saw several crocodiles, but they all steered clear of us. That would be quite insane to bother Philip. It would be quite insane to bother Philip. Like Carter and Zia, we got a late start leaving the underworld. I was alarmed at how far the sun had already climbed in the sky. The heat had turned the air into a soupy haze. My shirt and trousers were soaked through. I wished I'd brought a change of clothes, so it wouldn't have made much difference, as my pack was down too. Also, with Walt around, there was no place to change. After a while, I got bored. I was watching the delta. I turned and sat cross-legged, facing Walt. If we had some wood, we could start a campfire and fill its back. Walt laughed. I don't think he'd like that. Plus, I'm not sure we want to send up smoke signals. You think we're being watched? His expression turned serious. If I were Popus or even Sarah Jacoby, he didn't need to finish that thought. Any number of villains wanted us dead. Of course they'd be looking for us. Walt rummaged through his collection of necklaces. I didn't notice the gentle curves of his mouth at all, or how his shirt clung to his chest in the humid air. No, all business. That's me. He chose an amulet shaped like an abyss, toast sacred animal. Walt whispered to it and threw it into the air. The charm expanded into a beautiful white bird with a long curved beak and black-tipped wings, circled above us, buffeted my face with wind, then flew off slowly and gracefully over the wetlands. Reminded me of a story from those old cartoons, the birds that bring babies in bundles. Some ridiculous reason, that thought made me blush. You're sending it to scout ahead, I guess? Walt nodded. He'll look for the ruins of Sais. Hopefully they're close by. Unless ISIS sent us to the wrong end of the Delta, I thought. ISIS didn't reply, which is proof enough she was miffed. We glided upstream on Crocodile Cruise Line. Normally I would have felt uncomfortable having so much face time with Walt. But there was so much to say and no good way to say it. Tomorrow morning, one way or another, our long fight against the Profits would be over. Of course, I was worried about all of us. I left Carter with the sociopathic ghost of Uncle Vinny. I hadn't even called up the courage to tell him about that Theo Kitchen became a fireball lobbing maniac. I worried about Amos and his struggle with Seth. I worried about our young initiates, virtually alone at the first gnome and no doubt terrified. I felt heartbroken for my father, who sat on his underworld throne grieving for our mother yet again. And of course I feared for my mother's spirit. On the verge of his destruction somewhere in the Duat. More than anything, I was concerned about Walt. The rest of us had some chance of surviving, however slim. Even if we prevailed, Walt was doomed. According to Stepney, Walt might not have survived our trip to Sais. I didn't need anyone to tell me that. All I had to do was lower my vision into the Duat. Rays took the aura swirled around Walt, growing weaker and weaker. How long, I wondered, before he turned into the mummified vision I'd seen in Dallas. Then again, there was the other vision I'd seen at the Hall of Judgment. After talking to the Jackal Guardian, Walt had turned to me, and just for a moment I thought he was... Anubis wanted to be there. Walt interrupted my thoughts. I mean in the Hall of Judgment. He wanted to be there for you. That's what you were wondering about. I scowled. I was wondering about you, Walt Stone. You're running out of time and we haven't had a proper talk about it. Even saying that was much difficult. Walt trailed his feet in the water. He let his shoes to dry on Philip's tail. Boys' feet are not something I find attractive, especially when they've been just removed from lucky trainers. Walt's feet were quite nice. His toes almost the same color as the swirling silk in the Nile. Carter is complaining about my comments on Walt's feet. Well, pardon me. It was much easier to focus on his toes than on the sad look on his face. Tonight at the latest, he said. But Sadie, it's okay. Anger swelled inside me, taking me quite by surprise. Stop it! I snapped. It's not anywhere close to okay. Oh yes, you've learned that. You've told me how grateful you are to have known me and learned magic at Brooklyn House.
Drink more. He's reading about.
And help with the fight against the Apophis. All very noble, but it's not. My voice broke. It's not okay. I pounded my fist on Philip's scaly back, which wasn't fair to the crocodile. Beyond that, what wasn't fair either. But I was tired of tragedy. I wasn't designed for all this loss and sacrifice and horrible sadness. I wanted to throw my arms out around the walls, but there was a wall between us. This knowledge that he was doomed. My feelings for him were so mixed up. I didn't know whether I was driven by simple attraction or guilt. Or dare I say it? No. Or stubborn determination not to lose someone else I cared about. Sadie. Walt gazed across the marshes. He looked quite helpless, and I suppose I couldn't blame him. I was being rather impulsive. If I die for something I believe in, that's okay with me. But death doesn't have to be the end. I've been talking with Anubis and gods of Egypt, not that again. I said, please don't talk about him. I know exactly what he's been telling you. Walt looked startled. You do? And you don't like the idea? Of course not! I yelled. Walt looked absolutely crestfallen. Oh, come off it. I know Anubis is the guide for the dead. He's been preparing you for the afterlife. He told you that it'll be alright. You'll die a noble death, get a speedy trial, and go straight into ancient Egyptian paradise. Bloody wonderful. You'll be a ghost like my poor mother. Perhaps it's not the end of the world for you. But if it makes you feel better about your fate, that's been fine. But I don't want to hear about it. I don't need another person I can't be with. My face was burning. It was bad enough that my mother was a spirit. You'd never probably hug her again. Never go shopping with her. Never get advice about all sorts of things. Bad enough that I'd been cut off from Anubis, that horrible, frustrating, gorgeous god who'd wrapped my heart into knots. Deep down, I'd always known a relationship with him was impossible given our age difference. 5,000 years or so, but having the other gods decree him off limits just rubbed salt on the wound. Now to think of Walt as a spirit out of reach as well, that was simply too much. I looked up at him. After my bratty behavior, I would have made him feel even worse. To my surprise, he broke into a smile and then laughed. What? I demanded. Doubled over, still laughing, which I found quite inconsiderate. You find this funny? I shouted. Walt Stone? No. He hugged his side. No, it's just, you don't understand. It's not like that. Well, then what is it like? He got control of himself. He seemed to be collecting his thoughts when this white ibis dived out of the sky and landed on Philip's head, slapped its wing and called. Walt's smile melted. We're here, the ruins of Sais. Philip carried us to shore. We put on our shoes and waded across the marshy ground. In front of us stretched a forest of palm trees, hazy in the afternoon light. Herons flew overhead. Orange and black bees hovered over the papyrus plants. One bee landed on Walt's arm. Several more circled his head. Walt looked more perplexed than worried. The goddess who's supposed to live around here, Bee, didn't she have something to do with bees? No idea, I admitted. For some reason, I felt the urge to speak quietly. Yes, Carter, that it was a first for me. Thanks for asking. I peered through the palm forest. In the distance, I thought I saw a clearing with a few clumps of mud brick sticking up above the grass like rotten teeth. I pointed them out to Walt. The remains of a temple? Walt must have felt the same instinct for stealth that I did. Crouched in the grass, trying to lower his profile. Then he glanced back nervously at Philip of Macedonia. Maybe we shouldn't have a 3,000-pound crocodile tramping through the woods with us. Agreed, I said. He whispered a command word. Philip shrank back to a small wax statuette. Walt pocketed our crock, and we began sneaking around the ruins. The closer we got, the more bees filled the air. When we arrived at the clearing, we found an entire colony swarming like a living carpet over a cluster of crumbling mud brick walls. Next to them, sitting in a weathered block of stone, a woman leaned on a bow, sketching in the dirt with an arrow. She was beautiful in a severe way, thin and pale, and high cheekbones, sunken eyes, and arched eyebrows, like a supermodel walking the line between glamorous and malnourished. Their hair was glossy black, braided on either side with flint arrowheads. Her haughty expression seemed to say, "I'm much too cool to even look at you." There was nothing glamorous about her clothes, however. She was dressed for the hunt in desert-colored fatigues, beige, brown, and ochre. Several knives hung from her belt. The quiver was strapped to her back, and her bow looked like quite a serious weapon, polished wood carved with hieroglyphs of power. Most disturbing of all, she seemed to be waiting for us. "You're too nosy," she complained. "I could have killed you a dozen times already." I glanced at Walt, then back at the huntress. Thanks for not killing us, I mean." Woman snorted. "Don't thank me. You'll have to do better than that if you want to survive." I didn't like the sound of that. But generally speaking, I don't ask heavily armed women to elaborate on such statements. Walt pointed at the symbol of the huntress was drawing in the dirt, an oval with four pointy bits like legs. "You're Neath," Walt guessed. "That's your symbol, the shield with crossed arrows. "It looks like a bug," I said. "It's not a bug," Neath glowered. Behind her, the bees became agitated, crawling over the mud bricks. "You're right," I decided. "Not a bug." Walt wagged his finger as if he had just had a thought. "The bees! I remember now. That was one name for your temple, the House of the Bee." "Bees are tireless hunters," Mia said. "Fearless warriors. I like bees." Who doesn't?" I offered. "Charming little buzzers. But you see, we're here on a mission." Began to explain about Bess and his shadow. Leah cut me off with a wave of arrows. "I know why you're here. The others told me." I moistened my lips. "The others?" "Russian magicians, she said. They were terribly prey. They were terrible prey. After all, a few demons came by. They weren't much better. They all wanted to kill you." I moved a step closer to Walt. "I see, and so you destroyed them all, of course," Mia said. Walt made a sound somewhere between a grunt and a whoop. "Destroyed them because they were evil," he said hopefully. "You know, the demons and those magicians were working for a purpose, right? It's a conspiracy. "Of course it's a conspiracy," Nia said. "They're all in on it. The mortals, the magicians, the demons, the cat collectors. By mine, onto them. Anyone who invades my territory pays." She gave me a hard smile. "I take trophies." From under the collar of an armored jacket, she dug out a necklace. I went expecting to see some grisly bits of, well, I don't want to say. Said the cord was strung with ragged squares of cloth, denim, linen, silk. "Pockets." Nia confided a wicked gleam in her eye. Walt's hands instinctively took the sides of his worthless pants. "You, hit their pockets? You think me cruel?" Nia asked. "Oh yes, I collect the pockets of my enemies." "Horrifying," I asked. "I didn't know demons had pockets." "Oh yes," Nia glanced in either direction, apparently to make sure no one was eavesdropping. "You just have to know where to look." Right, I said. So anyway, we've come to find Bess's shadow. Yes, the goddess I said. And I understand you're a friend of Bess and Tyrex. That's true. That's true. I like them. They're ugly. I don't think they're in the conspiracy. Oh, definitely not. So could you perhaps show us where Bess's shadow is? I could. It dwells in my realm, in the shadow of ancient times. In the what now? I'm so sorry, I asked. Edith knocked her arrow and shot it towards the sky. As it scaled upward, the air rippled. A shockwave spread across the landscape, and I felt momentarily dizzy. When I blinked, I found that the afternoon sky had turned a more brilliant blue, striped with orange clouds. The air was crisp and clean. Flocks of geese flew ahead. The palm trees were taller. The grass was greener. Yes, Calder, I know it sounds silly, but the grass really was greener on the other side. Where the mud bricks ruins had been, a proud temple now stood. Walt, Neith, and I were just outside the walls, which rose 10 meters and gleamed brilliant white in the sun. The whole complex must have been at least a kilometer square. Halfway down the left hall, a gate glittered with golden filigree. A road lined with stone sphinxes led to the river where sea-lit boats once docked. It's orienting? Yes, but I'd had a similar experience once before, when I touched the curtains of the light in the Hall of Ages. We're in the past? I guess. A shadow of it, Beat said. A memory. This is my refuge. It may be your burial ground, unless you survive the hunt. You mean you haunt us? We're not your enemy? That's your friend. You should be helping us. Sadie's right, Walt said. Apophis is your enemy. He's going to destroy the world tomorrow morning. Yes, snorted. The end of the world? I've seen that coming. For eons. You mortals have ignored the warning signs, but I'm prepared. I've got an underground bunker stockpiled with food, clean water, enough weapons and ammunition to hold off a zombie army. Walt knit his eyebrows. A zombie army? You never know, Neat snapped. The point is, I'll survive the apocalypse. I can live off the land. She jabbed a finger at me. Did you know the palm trees have 6 different edible parts? And I'll never be bored, Leah continued, since I'm also the goddess of weaving. You have enough twine for a millennium of macrame. I had no reply. I wasn't sure what macrame was. Walt raised his hands. Nia, that's great, but the prophet is rising tomorrow. He'll swallow the sun, plunge the world into darkness. The world will crumble back into the sea of chaos. I'll be safe in my bunker, Nia insisted. If you can prove to me that you're friend and not foe, maybe I'll help you with Bess. Then you can join me in the bunker. I'll teach you the survival skills. We'll eat rations and weave new clothes from our pockets of our enemies. Walt and I exchanged looks. The goddess was a nutter. Fortunately, we needed her help. So you won't tell us, I said. And we're supposed to survive until sunset, she said. Evade me long and you can live in my bunker. I've got a counteroffer, I said quickly. No bunker. If you win, then you help us find Bess's shadow. But you also fight on our side with Apophis, against Apophis. You're really a war goddess and a huntress and all that. You should enjoy a good battle. Leah grinned. Done. I'll give you a 5-minute head start, but I should warn you, I'll never lose. When I kill you, I'll take your pockets. You drive a hard bargain, I said. But fine. Walt elbowed me. Sadie? I shot him a warning look. As I saw it, there was no way we could escape this, but I did have signs that might keep us alive. We've begun, Leah cried. You can go anywhere in my territory, which is basically the entire Delta. Doesn't matter. I'll find you, Walt said. But 4 minutes now, Leah said. We did the only sensible thing. We turned and ran. What is macrame? I yelled as we barreled through the rushes. It's a kind of raving. Walt said. Why are we talking about this? I don't know, I admitted. Just curious. The world turned upside down, or rather, I did. I found myself hanging in a scratchy twine net with my feet in the air. That's rack macrame, Walt said. Lovely. Get me down! I pulled a knife from his back, practical boy, and managed to free me, but I reckon we lost most of our head start. The sun was lower on the horizon. How long would we have to survive? 30 minutes? An hour? No. Walt rifled through his pack and briefly considered the white rasp crocodile. Philip, maybe? No, I said. We can't fight Neath head on. We have to avoid it. We can split. Tiger, boat, sphinx, camels, no invisibility. Walt muttered, examining his amulets. Why don't I have an amulet for invisibility? I shuddered. The last time I tried invisibility, it hadn't gone very well. Well, she's a hunting dog, Aldous. We probably can't fool her with any sort of concealing spell, even if we had one. Then what? He asked. I put my finger on Walt's chest and tapped the one amulet he wasn't considering, the necklace that was the twin to mine. The Shen amulets? He blinked. But how can those help? We split up and buy time, I said. We can share thoughts through the amulets, right? Yeah, right. And they can teleport us to each other's side, right? Walt frowned. I designed them for that, but if we split up, I said, the Earth will have to choose one of us to track. We get as far apart as possible. If she finds me first, you teleport me out of danger with the amulet, or vice versa. Then we split up again and we keep at it. That's brilliant, Walt admitted. If the amulets will work quickly enough, and if we can keep the mental connection, and if the Earth doesn't kill one of us before we can call for help, and I put my finger to his lips. Let's just leave it at that. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. He nodded and gave me a hasty kiss. Good luck. The silly boy shouldn't do things like that when I need to stay focused. He dashed off to the north, and after a dazed moment, I ran south. Squishy combat shoes are not the best thing for sneaking around. I considered wading into the river, thinking perhaps the water would obscure my trail. I didn't want to go for a swim without knowing what was under the surface. Crocs, snakes, evil spirits. Cotton once told me that most ancient Egyptians couldn't swim, which had seemed ridiculous to me at the time. How can people living next to a river not swim? Now I understood. No one in his right mind would want to take a dip in that water. Carter says a swim in the Thames or the East Nile would be almost bad for your health. All right, fair boy. Now shut up, brother, dear, and let me get back to the brilliant Sadie Saves the Day part. I ran along the banks, crashing through reeds, jumping straight over a stunning crocodile. I didn't bother to check if it was chasing me. I had bigger predators to worry about. I'm not sure how long I ran. It seemed like miles. As the riverbanks widened, I veered inland, trying to stay under the cover of the palm trees. There were no signs of pursuit, but I had a constant itch in the middle of my shoulder blades where I expected an arrow. I stumbled through a clearing where some ancient Egyptians in loincloths were cooking over an open fire next to a small thatched hut. Perhaps the Egyptians were just shadows from the past, but they looked real enough. It seemed quite startled to see a blonde girl in combat clothes stumble into their encampment. Then they saw my staff and wand and immediately groveled, putting their heads to the dirt and mumbling something about Per Ankh, House of Life. Yes, I said. Per Ankh official business. Carry on, bye. Off I raced. Wondered if I would appear on the temple wall painting someday. A blonde Egyptian girl with purple highlights running sideways through the palm trees, screaming, "Yay!" in high-gust as Nia chased after me. Thought of some poor archaeologist trying to figure that one out almost lifted my spirits. Reached the edge of the palm forest and stumbled to a stop. Before me, cloud fields spread into the distance, nowhere to run or hide. Turned back. Thunk! An arrow hit the nearest palm tree with such force that the dates rained down on my head. Wald, I thought desperately now, please! 30 meters away, Neith rose from the grass. She had smeared river mud on her face. Palm fronds struck from her hair like bunny ears. I've hunted feral pigs with more skill than you, she complained. I've hunted papyrus plants with more skill. Now, Walt, I thought, dear Walt, now! Neith shook her head in disgust. I knocked an arrow. I felt a tugging sensation in my stomach, as if I were in a car and the driver suddenly slammed on the brakes. I found myself sitting in the tree next to Walt, on the lowest bough of a large sycamore. It worked, I said. Wonderful, Walt. I kissed him properly, or as properly as possible given our situation. There was a sweet smell about him I hadn't noticed before, as if he'd been eating those blossoms. I mentioned that old school rhyme. Well, there's Sadie sitting in the tree, Kissing. Fortunately, anyone who might tease me about was still 5,000 years in the future. Walt took a deep breath. Is that thank you? You look better, I noticed. His eyes weren't as yellow. He seemed to be moving with less pain. It should have delighted me, but instead it made me worried. That little smell. Did you drink something? I'm okay. He looked away from me. We better split up and try again. That didn't make me any less worried, but he was right. We had no time to chat. We both jumped to the ground and headed off in opposite directions. The sun was almost touching the horizon. I began to feel hopeful. Surely we wouldn't have to hold out much longer. I was almost stumbled into another macrame net. Fortunately, I was on the lookout for Neith's art and crafts project. Sidestepped the trap, pushed through a stand of papyrus plants, found myself back at Neith's temple. The golden gate stood open. A wide avenue of sphinxes led straight into the complex. No gods, no priests. Maybe Neith had killed them all and protected their pockets, or perhaps they were all down in the bunker preparing for a zombie invasion. Reckon that the last place Neith might look for was in her home base. Besides, Tara had seen Bess's shadows up on those ramparts. If I could find the shadow without Neith's help, all the better. We ran for the gates, keeping a suspicious eye on the sphinxes. None of them came alive. Inside the massive courtyard were two freestanding obelisks tipped with gold. Between them glowered a statue of Neith, an ancient Egyptian god. Shields and arrows had been piled around their feet like spoils of war. I scanned the surrounding walls. Several stairways led up to the ramparts. Setting suns cast plenty of long shadows, but I didn't see any obvious wolf silhouettes. Red had suggested I call to the shadow. I was trying to try when I heard the Bolt's voice in my mind. Sadie! It's awfully hard to concentrate when someone's life depends on you. I grasped the shannon and muttered, Come on, come on! I pictured Walt standing next to me, preferably without an arrow in him. I blinked and there he was. He almost knocked me down with a hug. She would have killed me, Walt gasped. But she wanted to talk first. She said she liked our trick. She said she was proud to slay us and take our pockets. Super, I said. Let's split up again. Walt glanced over my shoulder. Sadie, look! He pointed to the northwest corner of the walls where a tower jutted from the ramparts. As the sky turned red, shadows slowly melted from the side of the tower. One shadow remained, the silhouette of a stout little man with frizzy hair. I'm afraid we forgot our plan. Together we ran to the steps and climbed the walls. In no time we were standing on the parapets, looking at the shadow of Bess. I realized we must have been in the exact spot where Tara and Bess had held hands on the night Tara had described. Bess had told the truth. He left the shadow here so it could be happy, even when he wasn't. Oh, Bess, my heart felt like it was shrinking into wax shaft. Walt, how do we capture it? A voice behind us said, You don't. We turned, few meters away. Neith stood on the ramparts. 2 arrows were nocked on her bow. At this range, I imagined she'd have no trouble hitting us both. A good try, she admitted, but I always win the hunt. And with that, we end this chapter. Yeah. This is starting to get good, isn't it? This is getting good.